that's so key to all of this, right? Because that's the reason for this podcast, for this platform, is to explore that. It's the kind of question that made me pause, makes you think and think deeply about your perceptions, where you want to go because of those perceptions. So essentially, this is my answer to that, and it's what's up, guys? Welcome to Bridge to Self. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. So, the entirety of this solo episode revolves around a question and my answer to it. And that question is, what does it mean to be a Black immigrant child creating their own success on their own terms? And how do you know if you're on the right track? And so, essentially, I saw a version of that question come across on my YouTube Shorts feed. And it's the kind of question that made me pause, right? Like, that's a really, really good question. It makes you think, it's loaded, essentially. But again, it makes you think and think deeply about your perceptions and where you want to go because of those perceptions. And obviously, it's related to the theme of this show. And so essentially, this is my answer to that. And it's recognizing who you are, embracing that authenticity and leaning all into that as much as humanly possible. And so I'm going to break that down, but I want to focus first on just the creating your own success on your own terms part, because that's so key to all of this, right? Because that's the reason for this podcast, for this platform, is to explore that, right? For second gen, 1.5 gen kids living between worlds, figuring out what success means to you, and going after that to become the best version of who you are. That's the entire premise of what this is. And it's so difficult to do that because of everything that I've tried to tackle on this show. And it's, first of all, like, just the disconnect that can come just by being, right, by being a second gen kid, in terms of, and I know I've talked a lot about this on the show, and there's a lot of anecdotes out there and studies about the whole identity crisis that second gen kids can feel. And just for me personally, feeling like I was maybe too African for the Black Americans, and then maybe being too American for the Ghanaians, my family being from Ghana. And so not knowing where I fit in because of that, and just like balancing the culture of the country I was born into, right? Being in the US, but at the same time, never forgetting and respecting and embracing to a degree my parents' culture, right? Because that's where they came from, and figuring out how on earth I'm supposed to be both on the at the same time, when I'm not necessarily 100% one or the other. And so that's kind of one component of why it can be so hard to kind of create your own success, and figuring out what that means to you. And then also just your parents' dreams for you, right? And this is common among the children of Africans, or children of Caribbean folk, or even a lot of immigrant children in general talk about this, right? Just in terms of how hard, like, education is pushed, right? And in terms of, you have to be a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, or a failure, like that those are kind of your options. And it's not, and part of that too is like the disappointment that can come, that you feel if you don't become one of those things, whether it's said or unsaid. Like, even for me, even though I was blessed in that my parents didn't necessarily push that on me, but it's like the expectation of success and having a secure thing, just because of the sacrifices they made to come here, and the opportunities that I have that they didn't have back in Ghana. So I think those are kind of two things I think about. But to kind of go back to my answer, right, to that question, in terms of recognizing who you are, embracing that authenticity, and going all in as much as humanly possible, for that first part of it, in terms of recognizing who you are, I think a big thing that helps is like being around like-minded people, right? Like, being around people who kind of have maybe similar thought patterns as you, or at least a similar mindset. Their experiences can obviously be different, but like people who are on the same wavelength, even if they don't necessarily look like you. of course, right? Like, and I know I've talked about this on a previous episode, but like how growing up, a lot of my friends were other immigrant kids and not necessarily like Black immigrant kids, although I did have one or two of those, but it was like, one of my best friends was Indian American. Another one of my best friends was Korean American. And then I also, I mean, in general, I just had a lot of white friends just because of the environment I grew up in, but I did have some like Black American friends. And I think that's why today my group of friends is so diverse, just because I think I've always had that global mindset and seeing myself in different cultures. And so I think that like-minded piece is such a big part of seeing who you are because it almost reminds you of who you are. And I think part of that too, especially as I've gotten older, is like finding groups that explore topics that you're interested in. Like it could be like a tennis club or a basketball group, or like a couple things I've done here living in Nashville, Tennessee, is joining like this stoicism group. Like they talk about the principles of stoicism, which I've kind of realized that's kind of how I some of those ideals like I've tried to take into my own life. And so I sought out that group, and an assertive communication group I joined, just in terms of being a better communicator to those I'm around, because I've kind of noticed maybe I have people pleasing tendencies. And so wanting to work on that, and being around other people who also want to work on that. And so, yeah, so the whole like-minded piece I think is really important in terms of like reminding yourself who you are, which in turn also helps you like figure out kind of who you are. And then in terms of like embracing that authenticity, I think this really stood out to me. Like this is a quote I saw from an entrepreneur, but he was talking about follow your curiosity. And that really resounds with me because like your passion can change. We're taught, at least in Western society, in the American context, to go after your passion. You got to be passionate about your doing. Passion, passion, passion. And it's like your passion can change, right? Like you evolve over time. Like your mindset can change over time. Like even for me, like knowing what I was interested in, honestly, just like being 29 as of recording, just even 5, 6, 7 years ago, where my head was at, things I would have considered passions at that time have even changed to in terms of like what I'm actually intrigued about right now, being at this point in my life. And so like following that, right? Because I think that's a part of that's a part of embracing who you are, your authentic self, like not maybe putting yourself in a box, because as authentic beings, we change and evolve over time. And I think follow your curiosity is a good frame for that. And so the last part of that, right, leaning all into that as much as humanly possible, I think about framing in terms of the doing of that. I think of framing your experiences that you've had into a strength, right? Like for example, and to go back to what I had mentioned earlier about the whole identity crisis thing that can be common for second gen kids, being between worlds, not knowing where you fit in, that can actually looked at from a different lens, especially as you get older, you can realize that that's actually a strength and can be a superpower for you, because you're able to relate to multiple groups of people and seeing where they're coming from based on their culture or their experiences. And that could be a tremendously valuable skill or asset to a company, or if you're an entrepreneur or just in different experiences throughout life, that could actually be an incredible strength. Something that was a pain when you were 7, 8, 9, 10 years old can be an incredible benefit when you're starting your career. And so leaning into that, right? Like so much of what we may experience as like second gen kids that we may have considered pain or complex or nuanced is the reason we are who we are now. And looked at it from a different lens, like it can actually supercharge your pursuit to like really understanding who you are and to being the most valuable you can be, or being the best person you could possibly be. So yeah, guys, that's this episode. Again, kind of the question was, what does it mean to be a Black immigrant child pursuing to creating your own success on your own terms. And how do you know if you're on the right path? In my eyes, in my opinion, it's recognizing who you are, embracing that authenticity, and leaning all the way in, all the way in. So that'll do it for me for this week's episode. You guys know the deal, every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time. So until next time, I'll see y'all soon. All right, peace out.